Masechet Gittin, Daf Lamed Vav. We saw the Mishnah that recorded 3 takanot that various rabbis made. The second one that we're going to see today is about that witnesses have to sign the get. The third one was Hillel's famous Prosbul. But we're just going to finish off with the first one, which is that an almana, although if she wants to collect her ketubah from yetomim, from the letter of the law, she has to make a shivu'ah, like anyone who wants to collect money from yetomim. But the rabbis' courts would not impose a vow on an almana because they were afraid maybe she collected part of it, and then she would be lying and making a shivu'ah that is false, which is a terrible thing. And so at that point, she was not able to collect her ketubah, and so Rabban Gamaliel came and said, all right, she doesn't have to make a shivu'ah. Instead, she can make a neder. And a neder is less severe, so we're not less worried about her saying something false. And it's sufficient that it will be a confirmation that she did not receive anything, so that we don't have to worry that she's taking something from the orphans that doesn't belong to her. Okay, so within that discussion, we mentioned when one makes a neder, and then you can always go to a chacham and undo the neder, and so we're worried about that. And so within that discussion, we wondering now, if someone, in general, the almana or anyone, goes to a chacham in order to undo his neder, does he have to detail exactly what the neder is, or can one do like we do today with hatarat nedarim? You just say, all nedarim that I made all year, right, are we regret, and then the Beit Din says, okay, mutarim lachem, mutarim lachem. Or do you have to actually specify each one? Funny story, one time we did Hatarat Nedarim, and then one woman came late after we were all done. And so the main rabbi she asked, can you do Hatarat Nedarim again for us? And so the main rabbi said, okay, fine. And then he said, since you're alone, you should tell us the details, because that's really the right way. And she didn't want to reveal the details of her neder, so I'm sure that the next year she made sure to come on time, so she wouldn't have to be put through that. All right. So, do you have to detail the neder, or could you say in general, I made a neder that I regret? Machloket. Rav Nachman amar eno sarich. Rav Papa amar sarich. Rav Nachman says you don't have to. Rav Papa says one must. Rav Nachman amar eno sarich di amar sarich zimnin degaiz le dibure vechacham may deshama mefer. Rav Nachman says one does not have to, because it can actually lead to a problem. Sometimes if someone makes a neder, let's say it has 3 parts of his neder, and when they go to the chacham, they're going to shorten it and mention only 2 of the parts, right? They want to cut short and not give all the details, because maybe one of the details is something negative or whatever. And then the chacham will say, okay, that's the neder, and he will say mutarim lachem, knowing only 2 out of the details, but then the person will go away and think, I had all of my entire neder was dissolved, and then we'll go ahead thinking that the neder is dissolved, even though it's not fully dissolved, because the person in the neder didn't even reveal everything to the sage. Therefore, it's better to say a generality. I made a neder, and I don't have to say all the details, and that way the chacham will just say, okay, the whole thing is mutarim lachem, without knowing the details, is actually better. Rav Papa amar sarich mishum miletad isur. Rav Papa, however, said, no, you have to tell the chacham the details, because perhaps undoing the neder will violate a prohibition. For example, in this case, if a woman did in fact take money, she got some of the partial payment of her ketubah from the husband before he died, and then he dies, and then she makes a neder, and she knows, okay, I'll make the neder, collect the whole thing in the court, and then I'll go to a different chacham and I'll undo the neder. And so this would be a problem. This is prohibited. And so you have to tell the chacham what it is that way. Right? If she tells him this story, the chacham will say, wait, I'm not going to undo that neder. You made a neder, and you're going to collect based on it falsely, so you don't deserve for this neder to be undone. And therefore, one must detail the nedarim, so the chacham knows whether this is honest and proper to dissolve it. Okay, so that's the two opinions. And so now we're going to challenge Tenan Hanose Nashim Ba'avera pasul ad sheyidor hana'a v'tane'ala noder ve'ober yored umegaresh. The Mishnah in Bechorot says that if someone, a Kohen, marries someone that he's not permitted to marry, so while he's married to that person, it's a Kohen to Gerusha, he's not allowed to serve in the Bet HaMikdash. However, if he wants to make teshuvah, so he'll come in the morning and he says, listen, I made teshuvah, I want to make teshuvah. And so here's what he can do. He cannot serve until he makes a vow that he will not get any benefit from his wife that's prohibited to him. And we learned about that he doesn't have to go and divorce his wife first and only then serve in the Bet HaMikdash. Let's say he wants to serve immediately on that day, and he said, I'm gonna divorce her later on when I get a chance. So that's permitted. He can make a neder, I will have no benefit from my wife, so that way they won't be able to be together. And then he can he can go and do avodah that day. And then at the end of the day, he steps down, he leaves the Bet HaMikdash, and then he'll give his wife a get. So you can do that. He can make a neder and serve even before the actual get. Now, that's the source. Here's the question. If you say that you don't have to specify the details, that was Rav Nachman's opinion, then we should worry that, you know what he's going to do? This wise guy, Kohen, he's going to make a neder, I won't benefit from my wife. He will serve in the Bet HaMikdash all day. Then afterwards, he'll go to a chacham. If he doesn't have to specify, say, I made a neder, and he undoes it, and then he's totally fine. And then he can go back and be with his wife. So this is a proof that for Rav Papa that one should have to detail the neder. And so the answer is demaderinan le barabim. No, we administer the vow in public. Because if you do it in public, then you cannot undo it. Good. Now this answer will make sense. Actually, that this was the opinion of Rav Nachman on the previous daf, who says that neder that was made in public, you cannot dissolve it, and so that's why. So we were not worried. He's going to make it in public, and therefore he can't dissolve it. But there was another opinion that says even something that's made in public can be dissolved. Then we have to worry that this guy's going to go serve, and then he'll undo his vow and remain with his wife who's prohibited to him. So the answer is demaderinan le al da'at rabim. Al da'at rabim with the consent of the public. This is different from berabim, which just means in front of the public. This is with the consent. So this would be done. There's different opinions about what exactly this means. So rabim would be either 3 people or 10 people. And al dat would be further that the kahal or representative of them says that we impose this vow on you, and then he has to be okay with it. So he's taking it upon himself with having in mind that this is with the conditional understanding and agreement of the entire public. It's not just that it's in public; it's based on the agreement of the public, and therefore, if he wanted to undo it, he would have to get the whole public to agree to undo it, right? It becomes going from something personal to dependent on the public opinion, and so therefore he would not be able to undo it. Amemar said that the halacha is even according to the opinion that says that a vow taken in public you can dissolve, but if it's based on the consent of the public, then it cannot be dissolved. So, but before someone who goes ahead and serves, someone who's married to someone who's not allowed to be, serves as a kohen, we will not only make him take this neder, we'll make him do it al da'at rabim, and that way he won't be able to undo it. Good. But we add, even this type of neder, al da'at rabim, the only time we say that you can't undo it if it's an optional act, something that you can do or you don't have to do. But if it's for a mitzvah, then you can dissolve even that type of vow. We see an example like this: Kiyahu makre deke ve'adere rab acha al dat rabim tava pasha biyanuke. There was a certain teacher, school teacher, and he was pasha biyanuke. He was hitting the kids too much, and so Rav Acha made a neder that forbade him from teaching ever again. Right? Hitting kids too much, you can't be a teacher anymore. So kicked him out of the profession. But then, Ravina later on brought him back. He dissolved this neder, even though it was a neder al dat rabim, because he could not find a teacher that was as midayek, as meticulous as he was. I guess the good comes with the bad is precisely because he was so strict that he was able to get the kids to read so carefully. And so Ravina, hopefully he learned his lesson and didn't hit the kids anymore. But anyway, Ravina was able to undo it because this was not just a matter of reshut, of okay, he feels like doing it, or it's something you feel like doing or not. This was a mitzvah. This was something that the public needed. You needed to teach the kids, and there was no one else to teach them. And so in that case, since it is al dat rabim, and this is a public need for the whole community, so then Ravina, on behalf of the community, says, listen, we actually need you, so we are going to dissolve that vow that Rav Acha had placed upon you. Okay, good. Now, Ve'adim chotmin ala get mipnei tikun ha'olam. The Mishnah mentioned a second takana, seemingly also by Rabban Gamliel, that witnesses should sign the get. It's not sufficient for the witnesses to see the delivery of the get. They actually have to sign it as well. So we ask, mipnei tikun ha'olam deoraitahu tichtiv v'chato b'sefer v'chatom. Why are you saying this is a rabbinic enactment, as isn't it actually in the Torah? Well, it's not Torah, but in Yirmiyah, because Yirmiyah, when he has to sign a document of sale, this is when he's predicting, he himself is predicting, Hashem is predicting that they're going to be kicked out of the land, and yet Yirmiyah is told to go and buy some land and keep the deed of sale in a clay jar for a long time, because there's a promise that they're going to come back, and so when they come back, he'll have this deed. Anyway, in that pasuk it says, write it down and sign it. So that means that you have to sign legal documents. So isn't that a basic law? Yirmiyah it's not a pasuk from the Torah, but Yirmiyah was doing it. We assume that he was doing it because it's a basic Torah law. So it's certainly before a takana of Rabban Gamliel. So we answer, Amar Rabba la sricha l'Rabbi Elazar. You're right. According to Rabbi Meir and other sages, yes, you have to sign it. That's a basic law of all documents, including a get. But here we're talking about the opinion, according to the opinion of Rabbi Elazar. Damar adem esira karte takin rabbanana de chatima mepnei tikun ha'olam. Following the opinion of Rabbi Elazar, who says that the primary witnesses that are needed to effectuate a divorce are the ones that watch the husband giving it to the wife. So you need them to actually make the divorce effective. So it's according to that opinion, according to Rabbi Elazar, they don't have to sign it at all. It's according to him that the rabbis made a takana. Rabban Gamliel is actually before Rabbi Elazar, but the point is that Rabbi Elazar is representing a view that was around before, and so according to that view, Rabban Gamliel said, you know what? From now on, we have to allow the witnesses to sign. And this is B'nei Tikun Ha'olam. You could also say here that this takana was actually not Rabban Gamliel. It doesn't say who it is in the Mishnah. I'm just assuming that since the previous one was Rabban Gamliel, this one should be too. But it could be that this one actually maybe was from a later time, maybe after the Rabbi Elazar. Okay. Either way, how does this help? Because sometimes the witnesses that see the delivery, they may die after some time, or they may go overseas on a trip and you can't find them anymore. And then if the get is challenged, or at the time that she wants to get remarried, they're going to say, okay, what is this get, right? The husband may come and challenge it, says, I didn't give you that get. And now the witnesses that saw it being given are not available. So this will cause her a problem. She won't be able to get remarried, or someone will come and claim that she's violating Eshet Ish. So therefore, even according to Rabbi Elazar, you can effectuate a get just by the Edem Esira. It's not a good idea. You want to have someone sign it so that if ever in the future someone should come and challenge it, you can always validate the signatures. See, you don't need the original witnesses to validate the signatures. All you have to do is find someone who knows them, or compare their signatures with something else that they signed that is already validated. And so that would be a big help. Good. Rav Yosef Amar, afilu tema l'Rabbi Meir, hitkin sheyeh adim mefarshin shemotehem begitin mepnei tikun ha'olam. Rav Yosef says, actually, you could say this takana was necessary even according to the opinion of Rabbi Meir, who requires the whole time, edeh hatima kate, they do have to sign. But the takana is instead that they have to specify their full name on the get. And this is a help. And here we have a braita that explains it kedatanya. Barishonaya kotev ani peloni chatamti ed. Im ketav yado yosem makom acher kasher v'im lav pasul. Originally, the witness would not write his full name. He would just write ani. If his name is Reuven, ani Reuven chatamti ed. Okay, but Reuven, how many people are named Reuven? Right? There's a lot of people. We don't which Reuven is this? And so, how would they ratify it? Well, if they could find another document that was the same signature, same handwriting, then they can ratify it. But if not, maybe it's not such a famous person who didn't sign so many things, and they won't be able to find that a match for his signature, then it'll be a problem. They won't be able to ratify it. And so, Amar Rabban Gamliel, Takana Gedolah Hitkinu, Shehu Mefarshin Shemotehen Begitin, Mipnei Tikun Ha'olam. And here it is, this one actually is Rabban Gamliel, so this supports what we said earlier, that in the Mishnah, although it's anonymous, it probably is also Rabban Gamliel. And so Rabban Gamliel made a great enactment that they should mention the full name, right? Reuven ben David is the Ed, and that way they'll know who it is. I mean, there could be a few people with that name, but much fewer, and so you'll be able to track them down. Was it this one? Was it that one? And that way you'll be more easily ratified, and again, that will help women to ratify their Gittin in case they are ever challenged. All right, now we ask, what if the witness wants to sign simply with a picture, with a mark, instead of a name? Because various sages did exactly that. Rav would draw a fish symbol instead of a signature. Rabbi Chanina drew a palm branch. Rav Chisda semech. Rav Chisda would draw a samech, some kind of maybe a support, or the letter samech. He has a samech in his name. Rav Hoshaya ayin, because he has an ayin in his name. Maybe so he drew the letter ayin, or maybe an actual I. The letter ayin actually did in Kitav Ivri look like an I. Rav Huna Sayer Makota. Rav Huna would draw a sail, a ship sail. Maybe he liked sailing. Shane. So all these sages, their signature was a symbol. And so what about that? Because the symbol, you can't really read the person's name, and certainly not the name of the father, but the people know that this is a signature of these people. So what about that? Is that permitted? Or after the takana, would you say that they can't use these signs anymore? And the answer is they can. Shane Rabbanan debikein simanaihu. These sages are different than anybody else, because everybody knows that this is their mark. All right, these are famous people. Everybody would come to them. They were judges, and so they would be signing many things, writing many letters and signing them. And so, since it was well known, if you see a fish, oh, that's Rav for sure. That's different from common people who aren't so famous, and their signatures aren't so famous. So then they have to write their full name and the name of their father so that they can be identified. Okay, so now just a question of chicken and egg here. Well, you said that their marks are famous. Yeah, but how did they become famous? Because how did they first sign the first time that Rav used his fish sign, right? Then it wouldn't be good, because when he first used it, no one knows it yet. He first has to introduce it. So how did they first publicize it? The answer is in letters, common letters that they would send. Not legal documents. And since they're sending a lot of letters, and everybody then would know, oh, the fish, that's from Rav, then once it became publicized that this is his trademark symbol, then after that, these rabbis could use these signs as their signatures, even on legal documents. And now we come to the third takana in the Mishnah, Hillel hitkin Prosbul v'chule tenan hatam. So over here in this Mishnah, it just says a quick summary that Hillel made a Prosbul, but it doesn't explain what it is, and so we quote a Mishnah in Masechet Shvi'it that elaborates. Tenanatam. Prosbul eno meshamet. If one writes a Prosbul and uses this legal mechanism, then the seventh year, the end of the seventh year, will not cancel one's debts, and he can continue to collect it afterwards. And this is one of the enactments of Hillel HaZaken. Because Hillel saw that the people were not lending to one another in the short time before the seventh year, because they know if I lend you now, then in a few months or in a year or whatever, then the Shemitah is going to come around, and at the end of the seventh year will be canceled, so then they wouldn't lend in the first place. And the Torah specifically said, be careful, do not even think about this terrible thing and say, since the seventh year is coming, I'm going to be stingy and not give my brother. And so people were actually violating this, and so better that they should lend and be able to collect, rather than violate this law. So this is, in this sense, it's protecting the lenders so that they don't violate this law of not lending. It would also help the poor people because since the lenders weren't giving any money, now the poor people had no way to receive money. This is a problem. This might be a loan either just for food or short term, or it might be a loan to someone that needs some capital for their business, right? Whatever it is. They need this loan to continue, and this will ensure the flow of capital, especially to these poor people. So it helps both sides. The Torah had a high level that was of ethics that people could not follow, and so this is a compromise law. It could be that at times economies also change, and it could be that in times of the Torah, that really loans would only be for poor people, but maybe as economies change, and sometimes loans are actually even for people that have wealth, but they just need some liquid amounts, and so Prosbul would be appropriate in cases like that. Okay, so anyway, Hillel came and made this Prosbul so people would be able to make a loan before Shemitah and have it continue and collect it after the Shemitah. Now, what is the actual mechanism? V'zehu gufo shel Prosbul, mosrani lachem piloni dayanin sheb'makom ploni, shekol chov sheyesh li etzel piloni she'egvenu, kol zeman she'erseh, v'yadim chotmim lemata o ha'edim. Prosbul, literally the word, it's a Greek word, bol, because boule means an assembly, official assembly, government group, or a court. And pros means before, so it means before the court. And the way it works is that the lender will come and say, I am transferring to you the judges, name the judges in this place, and name the place, that all the loans that I have outstanding from this person, that you, the court, will collect it any time that I want. You will collect it on my behalf. And the judges will sign it, or the witnesses can sign it. Now, how does this actually work? Is Hillel just making a loophole, just like breaking the law and making up something so that he can make a loophole around this deoraita? Okay, we're going to see in a second that the Gemara is going to answer that it's only the Rabbanan problem. But actually, there is a legal mechanism here. The way it works is that when one makes a loan, if there is land, and the Talmud elsewhere is going to say that there needs to be land, the borrower has to own land. So if there is land in a loan, and it's a written loan, then the lender actually has a mortgage, has a lien on the land. So in a way, he actually already has access to that land. Should the borrower default, the lender could go ahead and take the land. Now, he can't take the land yet before it's due. However, here's what happens. By giving it to the court, right, he's registering the mortgage in the courthouse. Like today, when you take a mortgage, it will be registered by the city, so that if you go ahead and try to sell your home, then someone will go and check that registry and say, wait, you can't sell it because you have a mortgage on it. So basically, you're registering the mortgage with the city, with the official court, which publicizes it. And in that way, you're actually saying that the court will collect it on your behalf. So should the borrower default, that way the land is already registered and in some senses already transferred to you, kind of like you have somewhat of an ownership, or already in a way already started collecting it. And so therefore, since it's in some way already yours, that's permitted, right? The Shemitah is only that you cannot collect it, but if the court is collecting it, so they would have to go and collect it on your behalf, right? Or you already have the payment in some form, in the form of a lien on the land. So that's actually the legal mechanism, right? It's not just a complete loophole. It is using a legal method to make it that it's no longer a loan that's just now being paid out of the blue after the Shemitah. Okay, so with that in mind, we ask, how could this be that from a Torah level, Torah says that the loan has to be canceled, and Hillel can come and make some enactment and go against the Torah law? Both in law and in spirit, right? How could he do this? Even if we can explain the legal mechanism, still it is somewhat of a leniency, a loophole that you're relying on this. And what about the spirit of the law? Amar Abaye b'shivi'it bazman hazeh v'rebihi. So Abaye explains actually Hillel is doing this only for shivi'it nowadays, and at this time, according to the B, as we're about to see, the laws of Shemitah only apply midrabanan. And so therefore, Hillel's takana is only going against a drabanan, not against a deoraita. I should add, just based on what we said a minute ago, that the borrower needs to have land in order for the Prosbul to work, right? Because there has to be a lien on the land. That is interesting, because it would mean that the Prosbul will only be effective if the borrower is a landowner, right? So if that means if he's completely poor and down and out, he has no land, then Prosbul will not work, and any loan that he has will be canceled. And so the mechanism of the Prosbul actually ensures that if it's a landowner, then probably the loan is a business loan. He needs some seeds to plant because he ran out. He had a bad year, so he needs some seeds to plant. So this is capital for his business. If he can plant them and then grow, so since that's a business loan, maybe then it's not against the spirit of the law for him to have to pay it back. Okay, so there's a lot to say here. All right. Anyway, let's see what the B says. How does he prove that Shemitah nowadays is only midrabanan? Detanya. Rabbi Omer, zehu debara Shemitah shamot b'shtei shemitot hakatuv medaber. Pasuk says Shemitah shamot. It says the word twice. Why? Achat shemitat karka v'achat shemitat kesafim. Bizman she'ata meshamet karka, ata meshamet kesafim. Bizman she'i ata meshamet karka, i ata meshamet kesafim. Is talking about both the shemitah of karka, that you can't work the land, and shemitat kesafim, that you can't collect loans. And put it by each word, referring to one and the other, and putting them back to back. So we're comparing the application of both. So when the laws of not working the land apply, then that's when the laws of canceling loans also apply. But when not working land does not apply, then the law of canceling money also does not apply. And nowadays, shivi'it of the land does not apply deoraita mideoraita, and therefore the law of canceling loans also does not apply mideoraita. But then the rabbis came and said, you know what, we're going to have a shivi'it law so that we remember it. And this is for Shemitat Karka, right? Like today, we still observe the laws of Shemitah in Eretz Yisrael, and we do so midrabanan because we don't want to forget about the law. It's going to be, how long? 2,000 years before you come back. And then if you never did Shivit, you'll forget about the law altogether. And also with Shemitat Kesafim, the rabbi said, yes, we're going to cancel the loans midrabanan to remember that this law exists. But then after the sages made this Rabbanan Shemitat Kesafim, then after that Hillel saw that the people are not lending to one another because on a Drabanan level their loans will be canceled. They won't be able to collect, and they weren't lending out, and the poor people weren't getting money. And so that's when Hillel made a takana of Prosbul that if you do this, if you sign this document, then you will be able to collect. But this takana is only going against a Drabanan, not against a Deoraita. So he has that authority. Okay, hold on. Now we have a question on that first takana that the rabbis made. They said, okay, the Shemitah does not apply Deoraita nowadays. Now you have something that doesn't apply Midoraita, but the rabbis then may have the right to make a takana that it will cancel loans. That is also going against a fundamental law, because here, I lent you money in the 6th year. Now, midrabanan, they say, I can't collect it. But what gives the right the rabbis to say that? On the Doraita level, you owe me money, so I should be able to go and collect my money, right? Well, how can the rabbis say, no, you can't go collect the money? How could they just cancel a debt that on the Doraita level exists? Okay, we have two answers. Amar Abaye, Sheva al ta'asehu. This is only passive. The rabbis have a right to override a Doraita law if one is being passive. Just don't do it. They could say, listen, even though mid-Doraita you have to blow shofar on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, but if it's Shabbat, don't. The rabbis say don't, because you're just sitting, you're not doing it. Sheva al ta'aseh. What the rabbis cannot do is say, oh, listen, we want you to go ahead and steal or violate Shabbat and do an act. That they don't have the power to do, but they can tell you to be passive. And here, they're telling the lender, be passive, do not go and collect. And they tell the other guy, you don't have to go and pay it back. And so, yes, they are violating a Doraita status of this loan, but only by telling the parties that you just sit home and don't collect the loan. That's one answer. Rava amar hefker betin haya hefker. Rava says the mechanism that the courts have the right to declare property ownerless. And therefore, even though you have my money, they could say, oh, that money, it belongs to you, the lender, we declare it ownerless, and now the borrower can take it for himself. And therefore I don't have a right to collect it anymore. So it works by the power of the court over any monetary situation. And what's our source? That Betin can declare anyone's property ownerless. Shneimar, v'chol asher lo yavo l'shlosh yamim k'asat hasarim v'hazekenim yahoram kol rechusho v'hu yibadel mekehal hagola. Ezra wants to tell the people they have to, big announcement, they have to separate from their wives and all that. And so he says everybody has to come within 3 days. And if you don't come, then all your property will be forfeited. So you see that Ezra has a right to impose this fine, or basically appropriate people's property if they don't do what he says. And so, since Ezra has that power as the head, as the court, so too any court has that power to do. So, Rabbi Eliezer amar mehacha ela nechalot asher nichalul Elazar HaKohen v'Yoshua bin Nun v'rashei ha'avot v'chi ma'inyan rashim esel avot omar lecha ma'avot manchilin et benehem kol ma sheyirsu af rashim manchilin et ha'am kol ma sheyirsu. Or another derivation of hafker betin hefker is from Rabbi Elazar. He says it's from pasuk in Yoshua that this is Elazar HaKohen and Yoshua bin Nun. They decided the inheritances of each of the various tribes and clans when they divided the land. And so, what do we learn from that? Well, it says Rasheh Ha'avot. What does it mean, Rashim and Avot? Are these heads? Are these fathers? Why call them Rasheh Ha'avot? Just call them, Nisi'im. So, to teach you that they're the same as fathers. Just like a father can decide his inheritance. I want this son to get this much and that son to get that other field, and whatever they want to do. So too, these heads had the authority to decide what to give this family and what to give that tribe they could decide whatever they wanted. So you see, what gives them the right to go and decide, you're going to take this land, you're going to take that land? Because they're a bet din. This source actually is even stronger than the previous source, because the previous source just said that Ezra can take away anyone's property and just make it public. Whereas here it says, we can take any land, and not only say, you're not going to get it, we can actually give it to this other family, or this other tribe. And so they can take and give, which would be good for in this case, where they could say, okay, even though on the Doraita level this money belongs to you, the lender, we say, no, we're going to give it to the borrower. And that's how they can create this dirabanan shemitah, and they're not actually canceling the loans, they're actually removing the property and giving it to the borrower. Okay. Ibaya lehu ki hitkin Hillel Prosbul lidarehu detaken or dilma lidare alma nami taken. Next question is, when Hillel made this takana, did he make it only for his generation? Because he saw in his generation there's a problem that people aren't lending, so he made this just a temporary enactment, or did he make it for future generations? Now what does it matter? In case you ever want to cancel it in the future. If he made it only for his generation, then the later generation can come and cancel it. I mean, maybe it'll continue on its own since he started it, and if it still applies, it'll continue. But then, if a later court wants to say, you know what, doesn't apply anymore, they can stop it, because he only made it temporary in the first place. But if Hillel made this enactment for all generations, then it's going to be very, very difficult for a later court to undo it, because we have a principle that a later betin cannot uncancel something that a previous betin did unless it's greater than it in wisdom and in number. Well, it's going to be very hard to overpass the court of Hillel. For number, this is a big question. How could it be number? Because the number is always 71, so you can't even, doesn't make sense. You can't even have Hasanadin more than number. So Rambam explains here that it's talking about the number of other sages that follow that bet din and look at it as authoritative. So that actually could be more, because the Jewish population grows, and if there's more adherents and sages that are following a certain bet din, all right, but it have to be greater in chokhmah also. So this base makes it almost impossible to ever undo a takana of a bet din. So that would be the difference of which one it is. So now we'll see a couple of attempts to figure out the answer. Tashema, Tamashimuel, lo katvinan Prosbul, I ela, I bebedina desura, I bebedina denhardea. Visa kadatech l'dare alma nami taked bishad bedina nami lichtevu. So Shemuel said that you cannot write a Prosbul except in the courts of Surah or the court of Nehada. These were big cities that had a lot of sages, learned people, and so the courts there were high-level courts. So you can only do this in a high-level court. You can't just go to a local little court and write a Prosbul. Okay, which makes sense, because if this, as we said before, you're registering this mortgage officially, so it has to be done in a very official way that will have publicity, and they're doing it correctly. Now, he's still here. It looks like Shemuel saying that, okay, you know what? I'm deciding only these two bet din and no other bet din. He's canceling the application of the enactment for cities besides Surah and Harda, for smaller cities. Now, if you think that Hillel made it for all generations, then all bet din should be included. What authority would Shemuel have to cancel the application of Prosbul in other bet din? Therefore, it must be that Hillel did it only temporarily, right? Well, not necessarily. Dilma kitakin Hillel ledare alma kegon bedina dide uchrav ameh v'rab aseh ta'alime le'afku'e mamona aval lekule alma la. No, maybe Hillel, when he first made the takana, he made it for generations, but only in a bet din like his own bet din, one that is has a high status, like the bet din of Rav Ameh or Rav Aseh, because only these have the power to do hefker, right? Not any three people can come and just say, okay, your house is not yours anymore. You need a recognized bet din in order to do this. So this was actually the enactment all the way from the beginning, is that only serious Batei Din can do it. And Shemuel was just defining for his generation, listen, these are in Bavel, these are the Batei Din that are well recognized and not other ones. So it actually is also a continuation of Hillel's takana. Okay. Now, yet another proof. Tashema damar Shemuel ha Prosbula ulbena de dayanehu I ayashar hayil abteline. Shemuel said this Prosbul is a disgrace to the judges, and if it were up to me, I would cancel it. Okay, we're going to see in a second what Shemuel means by this. How could he say that this Prosbul is a disgrace? But anyway, since he says, I would cancel it, so we ask, Avteline, vaha en bet din, yachol levatel divrei bet din havero, elem ken, gadol hemenu bechuchma ubeminyan. We said that if once there's a takana that a bet din makes for permanently, then no one can, a future bet din cannot undo it unless it's greater in wisdom and number. So Shemuel, he's not greater in wisdom and number than Hillel. So how could he say, I would nullify it? And the answer is, Hachikamar im ayasher hayed yotem Hillel abteline. He's saying, I wish, if only my strength was greater than Hillel, I would nullify it. But I'm not greater, so I can't nullify it. So therefore, this is, we tried to bring this as a proof that it was temporary. Hillel's the enactment was temporary, but actually not necessarily. It could be actually sound the opposite, that he wishes he could cancel it because he thinks it's a disgrace. Rav Nachman Amar Akayemena. Rav Nachman disagreed, the opposite of Shemuel. He says, I would uphold it. So we ask about him, what do you mean you would uphold it? It's already there, right? The takana is in force. Why do you have to say, I would make it? So he explains, I would say that even if a Prosbul was not written, I'll consider it as if written. He's going to say, you know what? Prosbuls across the board. Even if someone doesn't, you should write out the Prosbul. But what if you didn't? You forgot to do it? We should consider it as if it's written. In other words, we should make this takana and enforce it and expand it to such that it will be assumed that everyone writes a Prosbul and no loans will be canceled. So really diametrically opposite views about the power and the significance of a Prosbul, right? Rav Nachman saying this is a good thing. We want to keep loans going. We want to keep the economy going. We want poor people to get money. We want people to be lending out. And so this is the best thing that ever happened. So we should only strengthen it. Okay, now let's analyze Shemuel. Why not? When Shemuel says this is a disgrace, is he saying like chutzpah, insolence? In that sense, it would be because Shemuel basically is saying this Prosbul goes against the Torah, goes against the letter of the law, goes against the spirit of the law, and this is, a very difficult thing that Hillel did. And Hillel saw it was a need for it, but this is a disgrace that now not only are people not paying back, the judges, the important courts, have to now play a role and help people violate the law and spirit of the Torah. I mean, yes, it's a loophole. We found some legal way. In some cases, it's okay, right? But all these are rationalizations, and really, it's an affront to the judges. So that's one. That's the chutzpah one. Or is it saying the nichuta in terms of it's just laziness on part of it shows laziness by the judges. Because really, if someone would actually bring all their deeds and submit it to the court and say, here, you collect it for me, then that would be fine. And you don't need any takana to do that. And that would be a real way of doing it. What the loophole of the Prosbul is by making it as if I just sign this document or say in front of the court, I submit to you everything, all my loans, even though they're all back home in my safe. So it's as if I gave it to the court. So that was Shemuel's problem, according to this opinion, nichuta, that I would cancel it because it makes the judges look lazy. The judges should say, yeah, we're going to go around and make sure that we have submit every document, and then it's okay. It would be like selling chametz on Pesach, right? If someone's against it, maybe they're against it not because it's a loophole, but because we're not actually giving the chametz to the non-Jew. We're just making this we're signing this. It's as if I'm giving it to you. You're renting out the closet. So in that sense, he's not fundamentally against the entire idea of using this legal mechanism to circumvent the law and be able to collect loans, but do it the real way. Don't make it do it in a lazy way, and it makes the judges look lazy. So is it a disgrace or something that is laziness? So really this is a language question. What does the word ul bena mean? Ul bena in Aramaic, aluva in Hebrew. We have this statement from Ula, who is describing the Jewish people after when they do the golden calf. It says they are like a bride, aluva, a bride that is aluva, a disgraced bride, because they're promiscuous right under their canopy. Matan Torah is like a wedding day, and then immediately after they go and they're unfaithful. So this sense of aluva, this is not just being laziness, this is real disgrace. So therefore, this is a proof that it's the first one, chutzpah, that the sages have to take part in overriding the letter and spirit of a Torah law. Now that we mentioned this word aluva, we're going to see a little bit more discussion about that word. Amar Rav Mari, berah debat Shemuel, mai kera ad shemelech b'msivo nirdi natan reho. And so Rav Mari says, I'm going to add to this explanation here that Ula said from this pasuk in Shir HaShirim that says, while the king was at his table, meaning at the wedding banquet, the king being HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and we're still celebrating the wedding at the banquet, and nirdi natan recha, my scent gave forth its fragrance, meaning a bad scent, an unpleasant odor, right? While the king is still there, that Bnei Israel went and they sinned. So that is similar to Ula's statement, right? While they're during the wedding, she was unfaithful. However, Amar Rava adayin chavivutahu gaban tichtiv natan velo ketiv isriach. Rava says, I don't agree with that interpretation of Shir HaShirim. No, it's the opposite. While the king was at the table, it says the smell went forth. It doesn't say the smell went bad and reeked. Sent forth, meaning is a symbol of love, that they were still Hashem still loved them throughout. And so a different understanding of that pasuk in Shir HaShirim. And one last agada on aluv. Tenor banana ne'alavin ve'enan olebin. Shomim harpatan ve'meshibin. Osin veheba usmechin biyisurin. Alehem hakatuv omer yohavav keset hashemesh bigburato. The sages taught that someone who is insulted, but it doesn't insult back. They hear shame, but they don't respond. Someone shames them, and they say, okay, that's their problem, but I don't have to stoop to their level. I'll just ignore it. People that act out of love and are joyful in their suffering say, this is Hashem's will, for good, for bad. About those people, it says, and those that love HaKadosh Baruch Hu are like the sun that goes forth in its might, because nothing could ever bother them. They take it as it comes, and even if they're disgraced, they don't disgrace anyone in return. Baruch Adonai Olam, Amen ve'amen.